go, George? All right, Matt, George, Arl, who? Good afternoon. Hello, Huskies. Hello. Oh, should we do? I wish Sean Fraser was here. We could go red, black, red, black. Well, welcome. Thank you, everybody, for being here and coming to the town hall. To give you a feel for the agenda today, I wanted to give you a brief budget update. There's been some political movement, as you probably read about, so I wanted to give you a little update on that. And then shift gears and talk about program prioritization, and something that we've been working on for a year and a half, and we want to tell you as we go from this phase to the next where we are and what we're doing, where we've been, where we're going. And then leave a lot of time for your questions and answers. So let's get going. So to start, I might say that this has been an interesting last couple of weeks. We've been doing a lot of celebrations with our faculty, staff, students, alums, and in each one of those cases, I've just been amazed by the great things that are going on at this university. I don't know, did anybody go to the Research and Artistry Day, those poster sessions? Was that amazing? So those students did amazing research, and they just blew me away. And of course, they did that amazing research under the guidance of our faculty and our staff. So the faculty and staff blow me away. We had the Presidential Professor Awards last week and the Trustee Professor Award last week, and amazing things that our faculty are doing. And we've been having staff awards today, and this morning was a professional staff breakfast, and thank you. So I guess I just want to say, in these trying times, thank you. Our students are getting a great education, and you all are doing amazing things in these trying times, so good on you. So, I don't know if anybody's seen one of those signs. So there were a number of those there out in the MLK a few months ago when there was a rally to support getting a budget, and we see these signs around the state. And I think that sentiment got some traction in the last few weeks as we got closer and closer to the impending peril of some of the schools in the state, with Chicago State saying they were going to close next week. That got some people's attention. And as voters got the attention of the legislators, I think they decided that it really was disastrous for the state to continue to erode higher education. So they still haven't figured out the total state budget fix, but they did figure out that there was a pool of money that they could tap into that was focused on higher education to do some short-term stopgaps. And I see Al Phillips sitting here in the front row. Al is Vice President for Finance Administration. Could you give us a few details on what they actually did and what that means for us? Using the mic would be good.
Yes. Can you hear me? There we go. As you know, last year at this time, our state appropriation was about $91 million, and we received about $20 million in MAP funding. The appropriation that was passed last week was for $26.4 million in operating funds and $9.7 million in terms of MAP funding. As I said in the last town hall, we're not exactly in the same category of a lot of the institutions that are struggling. We're in much better financial shape, a lot of because of all the steps that we've taken to cut back in spending, being very careful about filling positions and doing projects and those things. So we were able to get through the summer, get through the fall, certainly, even if we didn't have state funding. This makes that process a whole lot easier. We're still short about $70 million as this came out of the General Assembly. It was approved by the governor. This was not to be the only funding we would get for fiscal year 17 or for 16. We still don't have funding for 17, but we anticipate that by the end of May, before the legislative session is over, We will have a FY17 budget. I don't think anybody in Springfield wants to go through this again next year. And then at that time, we'll know what that's going to look like going into next year. But for now, this isn't everything that we need. It certainly helps. It does not put us in a position where we can start just spending money again. We're still going to have to be very careful about what we spend. On the other hand, we're still not talking about layoffs and furloughs, and we will be able to get through this. So, with that.
It's good to end on when they
Yeah.
clap. When they applaud, it's good to stop. So, unless you want an encore, we could get your lighters up or whatever. Let's shift gears. Thank you for that update. We've done a lot of hard work to manage the budget, and I've been thinking about managing the budget, our processes inside. We've had a great team of people working together, but I'd like a formal advisory group of really smart people to help me think about the budget at the university. So I've appointed a cabinet-level working group to look at all aspects of our mission and our budget and how we put those pieces together. So we've been doing good work the last 2 years to build a new budget and budget process, but we've got more work to do. And I felt like I needed to really have a team focused on that, and not just focused on trying to figure out how to deal with this crisis, but how do we have the right budgets and processes as we go forward. So I've appointed this advisory group to me. It's Al Phillips and Lisa Freeman, Executive Vice President, Provost, are going to co-chair it because of their backgrounds and their experiences and positions in the institution. And then 3 additional people. One is Jerry Blasey, our Interim Vice President for Research and Innovation Partnerships. Jerry is a very experienced researcher. He's done research, multidisciplinary as well as focused research. And he came back to us about a year ago after spending 3 years in Washington, D.C. working for President Obama as his science advisor. So he understands agencies, he understands Capitol Hill, federal funding, and how to do research. So I think he brings a great perspective and knows internally how NIU works. Also, I asked Brett Coriel to come. Brett is our Vice President for Information Technology, is a great systems thinker, and has been at public and private institutions. And he also spans the whole institution with his work and understands how IT and staff work across the institution. So he brings horizontal skills and system skills, I think, to this, and has done a lot of process work, process engineering and systems work through his career. And then finally, Mike Mann, who's Associate Vice President for State and Government Relations and our board liaison. And Mike brings to us not only the understanding of what's going on in Springfield right now, but a career of experience in Springfield working for the State Board of Education and other agencies in Springfield. So I think that's a great team of people to think multidisciplinary, top to bottom, left to right about our budget and our processes and how we do those effectively. So I wanted to let you know I've got that advisory group going, and if you want to talk about those issues with any of those folks, feel free. So what am I asking them to do? Create a multi-year budget timeline and process that really directly links our mission and our budget. And that's really, when we shift gears again to the program prioritization process, the same kind of objective. How do we link our budget with our mission? How do we spend our money the smartest way to get to our goals? So it's going to encourage responsibility for budget development and execution at all levels, top to bottom. This isn't just something that's done at the pinnacle of the institution. It's what we all have to do to manage our budgets effectively and help our students, our research, artistry missions, and our outreach and engagement missions. And we want to be transparent, fiscally responsible, accountable, and academically responsive. So these are some of the charges that I've given that group to work through. Okay, we're shifting to third gear now. Program prioritization. About 2 summers ago, Lisa Freeman and I were talking about how do we really spend the money the best way we can in this institution. We haven't had formal processes to help us think about that in NIU before. And we've both been other places where there's been more formal systems. So we started talking about that. How do you have an inclusive, broad, deep process that really helps us think about how we spend our money most effectively to fulfill the mission of the institution? How do we allocate those resources? How do we become more efficient and effective? How do we help each other do our jobs better? And how do we do that not by guessing, but by being data informed and by being informed by the smart people that are doing the work in the institution? So we started thinking about how to do program prioritization to align NIU's budget with its overall mission and better serve our faculty, staff, students in the region. We wanted to position NIU as an institution that's stronger, more innovative, and has a more sustainable academic and financial model. So again, trying to get that money aligned with where we need to go and what our priorities are. It needed to be rigorous and methodical in all of the programs in the institution, not just segments, but all of them. And it turned out to be, 459 programs that we looked at through this process. That's a fairly comprehensive look. We wanted to include all the stakeholders. It wanted to be, and it was facilitated by a coordinating team with diverse perspectives. So again, we weren't just focusing on narrow areas or trying to come through one lens, but have multiple lenses looking at it. And it needed to be guided by evaluation criteria developed by input from across the university community and finalized through shared governance. So we did all that, and I think we came up with some pretty good criteria. Now, we wanted it to be informed by both quantitative and qualitative data, because you can run a bunch of numbers, but you can kind of miss what they mean without the context. So we really needed that narrative around the programs, where they were going, what their goals and strategies were, and how that fit with these numbers. Now, that review was conducted by 2 task forces comprised of current faculty and staff and members of that were nominated by the NIU faculty, staff, and students. So we had some amazing teams, and our co-chairs, all 4 are here today. Matt Streb, George Slotsky, Alan Clemens, and Michelle Picketts, and they're here in the front row. Could we first thank them for their leadership on this group? So I think Matt and George are going to come up and talk a little bit about what you guys did. So why don't you come up and do that?
Thanks, President Baker. Alan and Michelle, we want you to come up as well. We're going to be very, very brief. But I think the one thing that I want you all to be aware of is that you're looking at 4 people who were initial skeptics of this process when we were first asked to do this. And after going through the exercise, I am extremely proud of the process that we put together, and I'm extremely proud of the work that our task force members have done. We were asked to take a trustee mentality, and that meant we were asked to put the university ahead of everything else, and I think that we did that. People talk to me about, well, what's going on the task force, and obviously we can't talk about that, but what I always tell people is I'm not going to agree with all 236 categorizations that our task force made. But I do believe in the overall message that our task force report is going to send. And I think it's going to be something that's going to really improve the university. And the last thing I'll just leave you with is I may not have agreed with all 236 categorizations, but if I didn't agree with one, that meant that I was in a very, very small minority on that task force. Because for us to categorize a program in a category, it required 18 people on the administrative task force and 17 people on the academic task force out of 21 to agree with that categorization. And so what I think that shows you is that what you're going to hear, what you're going to read in the report is really reflects the views of the task force as a whole. So I just want to thank all of I see a couple of our task force members in the audience today, and I just want to thank them for all the hard work that they've done.
I just wanted to add a couple of comments to what Matt has talked about here. And I guess the first thing is I really strongly encourage feedback once the reports are released. It would be very much appreciated by the committee members as well. We really do want to hear your comments about the process and about the results of the process. I also want to thank the committee members. It's been a long process. There's been a lot of hours, a lot of hard work, and I want to thank them for their diligence, their integrity, and their adherence to the rules that we set at the beginning of the process. Thank you very much to all the committee members for that. I think they deserve a big round of applause for that. It's been a lot of work. And finally, I just want to thank my fellow co-chairs. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and They're great people and made the process a lot easier. One person trying to do this by themselves, it would have been impossible. So thank you to my co-chairs.
So you all met on Fridays for what, 4 to 8 hours every Friday for 4 months, since January? Holy cow. With no cocktails involved.
We didn't get pizza once.
Oh, you got pizza, living big, okay. Who paid for it? Okay, Al. So, to reiterate some of the issues with it, all programs, academic and administrative, were reviewed. All employee contracts will be honored. So there's, this is going to be a long process from here on out as we implement. And if we do end up closing programs, we're going to go through the academic processes that we always go through when we open and close programs. So all students will be able to finish their academic programs if, in fact, we do shut any. So I wanted to, for those of you who haven't been keeping score the last year and a half on what we were doing, here is just the high points of kind of dates that we worked on things to remind you. In the fall of 14, we explored the program prioritization process and formed some coordinating teams to get us started on this. Then we had preliminary communications with the university that said, we think we need to align our budget with our mission, and we need a process to do that. Let's work on that. So that was the fall of 14. In 15, we started establishing the guiding principles that I've shared with you. We defined the academic and administrative programs. We developed the criteria with broad university participation. And then we nominated and selected task force members. So pretty good spring of 15 work. This fall, program data were analyzed by the program faculty and staff in the form of program narratives, so the write-ups that were done for each of the programs to go along with the data. And then this spring, the task force reviewed the data and the narratives every Friday for 48 hours, once with pizza. And the task force prioritization programs were put into 5 categories you'll hear about in a minute, and provided with recommendations to the NIU community. I was going to say writing as we speak, but they will be finishing their writing, and then we will publish them next week on May 2nd. So you'll be able to go to a website and look at those and comment on them. And as George said, we need you to comment on them. These are some really smart people that spent a whole lot of time looking at these, but we need the rest of the community to look at them now because you're all smart too, and you're going to have insights and perspectives on them, and we need that. Then the task force work ends, and we send them to the Bahamas for a week or something. I wish we could. And then the post-report implementation phase begins. And so I'm going to turn it over to Executive Vice President Provost Freeman to walk us through where we're headed now. Lisa?
These are better? These are people who were nominated for this work by members of the university, of the community, because they're thought leaders, because they're people who, when faced with challenges, roll up their sleeves instead of wringing their hands. They're people who have served on committees over time, and people know that when they're asked to do something, they deliver. And that's another way of saying we asked really, really busy people to take on a lot more work. And so we are so very grateful for the effort that you put out on behalf of NIU. And I'm thrilled that you're inviting feedback from the campus on the process. That's great. It's above and beyond the call of duty. And I want to just remind everybody that they're inviting feedback, but the best way to get feedback to those who are really going to be writing the action plans that inform the post-report phase of program prioritization, the post-task force phase of program prioritization is not just to talk to the task force chairs or members of the task force. We've actually created a formal mechanism for submitting feedback to the people who'll be writing action plans, and I'm going to invite Vice Provost Carolinda Douglas up to the front to talk a little bit about what's going to happen between now and May 2nd and May 23rd in terms of program prioritization, next steps.
So as you can see, we all know we've reached an incredible milestone in the program prioritization process. The task force reports are due on April 30th, and it looks like we're in good stead to get that done. That's Saturday, and over the weekend, we will be getting them up and ready for you to view on Monday. So Monday, May 2nd, they will be posted on our program prioritization website probably about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The reports themselves are going to be made public, but there's other aspects. The narratives will be posted, and they will be through a login that all of you will have access to, but it won't be generally public. We're looking for feedback, as everybody so far has said, and that feedback can be done in a couple of different ways. Certainly, you can provide feedback directly to the program leaders, so the next step will be the program leaders, the approvers, the ultimate people who approve the narratives to begin with, will be the people who will be creating action plans. So you can provide that feedback directly to them, and you can provide it through the website. And as Provost Freeman said, there'll be a mechanism by which that can occur, and I'll show you that in just a moment. We're asking for that feedback to be completed, though, by May 23rd. The reason that we have that deadline is because we want to make sure that the program leaders have the data and the feedback that they need, and so that they can work that into their action plans. And as you know, the action plans are due on July 15th. There are also a couple of groups, and we encourage as many as want to, of shared governance groups who will be providing feedback. I can give you an example. The Student Association has got both an academic and an administrative task force that's working on providing some formal feedback, and we strongly encourage that as well. So what's in the task force? I can't, what's in the task force report? I can't tell you exactly because I haven't seen them, but I can tell you what we asked for and what the table of contents is likely to have in it, with some changes basically based on their processes. So first you'll see an introduction. That is the only part of the reports that were written by Office of the Provost staff. And that basically provides context and background for the program prioritization process generally. The rest of the reports will be entirely autonomously written by the task force members themselves. And what we've asked them to do is first give you a little bit of introduction about the methodology, how did they score, what were their voting rules, etc. We've asked them also to tell you about the results, what kind of recurring themes came up, how did they generally use the categories. Some of the one of the task forces, I'll say, had some programs that were proposed new and some programs that were proposed to be voluntarily eliminated. And they'll talk about it in their task force reports, how they went about that process. And then lastly, general comments and recommendations. And then chapter 4 or thereabout, depending on if they add more chapters, you'll see the categorization. And what we've asked them to do in that is to basically put Category 1, Category 2, Category 3, and then alphabetically underneath of each of those, the category or the programs that fall into that with a short rationale as to why they're there. Just so you can be reminded of what those categories are. They were asked to put them in 5 categories: programs that are candidates for enhanced resources, programs that are set to continue with no change in resources, programs that are recommended to continue with reduced resources, programs that are mission critical but require some transformation, and programs that are subject to additional review and they're recommending possibly candidate for phase out. Roughly speaking, we asked that the task forces put approximately 20% into each group. You'll also see some references and appendices, and one appendix I just want to point out to you that will be available because we're listing all of the programs in the sections, the categories that they're in. One appendix will also have it by division, by unit, by college, by department, so you can easily look up your program. The other thing that you'll see that's different on Monday is that we will have revamped our website, and it will be looking a little bit different than it had in the past. Most of the things that were in the website prior to this time will be in a tab called History, so they'll still be there, but they won't be prominent anymore. The FAQ section, which we've had all along, will be wiped clean. The questions that were already in there will be put in History, but this will be an opportunity for people to create new questions based on the release of the task force reports. And then the other three tabs that are very important. The first is the task force report tab itself. Again, both the task force reports will be in there, and this will be public. The other things that you'll see there are the charter and ground rules that they followed all along, and something called the action plan template. So as the program leaders develop their action plans, there's a template by which they can use this to do that task. The second tab there is called the program narratives. This will be by login, password protected, so all of you will have access to that, but the general public will not. And this is basically the program inventory that we've had all along, but now in addition to having the list of the programs and the program leaders, the authors, approvers associated with it, we'll now also have the actual narratives that were submitted and what the program prioritization task forces actually had to use when they were evaluating the programs. And the last item is a feedback page, and it'll look something like this. And this feedback page basically says we need your feedback by May 23rd. And please let us know who you would like it directed to. What program leader would you like it directed to? If you don't tell us what program you'd like it directed to, we'll try and make our best guess based on the content of it, but it would be helpful if you could do that. You can either tell us who you are if you want that to be a part of what your feedback is, or you can do this anonymously. And the last thing I just want to say is that all feedback that comes through the website will be made available to the president and his senior cabinet. And if I could just add my thank you too. I've been working with these task force chairs for many months now, and it has been a real delight, and I'll miss you guys.
So now that Vice Provost Douglas has been seated, I'm going to actually ask her to stand up again to be recognized. By the time we're through July 15th, there will have been almost 500 people on this campus who contributed in some way to the program prioritization process. And the coordination of all of that work was facilitated by a coordinating team led by Carolyn Douglas. And the process has gone amazingly smoothly for an undertaking of this magnitude done for the first time on our campus. And I think she's deserving of recognition for taking us this far and further. So you've seen this slide previously. I think everybody knows now that the task force reports are going to be available Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. And we've provided a number of ways for anonymous and identified individual and group feedback to be provided. And that feedback is going to be shared with the deans and vice presidents who are responsible for providing a formal reaction to the program prioritization task force recommendations in the form of action plans. And those action plans are going to be developed with feedback from people sitting here, from shared governance groups, from the Student Association, as Vice Provost Douglas has pointed out. We expect a lot of thoughtful collaboration and conversations to occur across and within colleges and across and within divisions during this period. Exactly how those conversations will look will depend in part on what the recommendations say, and we don't know that today. But we do know that the deans have committed to having 2 half-day retreats so that we can take the feedback given to the colleges and look at it together so that we can put together a unified academic plan that can be then shared with the cabinet, where all of the vice presidents will look at their divisional plans. Eventually, a plan that arises from the cabinet will be considered by the Executive Budget Committee. There'll be consultation with members of our shared governance group, specifically the Resource Space and Budget Committee and the Academic Planning Council, and divisional action plans will be turned into the president on July 15th. But July 15th is not an end. It's really still a beginning. There's a lot of work to do. Implementation is an ongoing process. And I really want to emphasize that. But first I want to talk about what's in an action plan. A number of us have used this word. We've talked about it as a formal response. We're developing a template, recommending a template for the action plan, and at least these questions and elements will be in it. So the first is, do you consider this specific recommendation of the task force to be reasonable? Why might someone consider something to be unreasonable? Well, there might have been misunderstanding, or there might have been some missing knowledge, something the task force just wasn't aware of when they made their recommendation, and this is an opportunity to point that out. Question is going to be, what type of response do you propose? And we're going to suggest those responses are going to be in 3 buckets: no action, routine action, and significant new action. So someone might say a recommendation is reasonable and I'm taking no action if the program prioritization task force recommendation is, this is a healthy program, it's doing well with the resources currently allocated, carry on. What might be an example of a routine action? And again, it's hard to make these examples without knowing what's in the task force report, and I don't, but we know we had 10 academic programs that were volunteered for deletion or discontinuance. So one of the people who volunteered a program to be eliminated might say, the task force concurred with my recommendation to eliminate this program. I know that I have a curricular process that must be respected to eliminate a program. I'm going to take that routine action. So that might be an example of a routine action. I think significant new action is a category that we'll see invoked in places where the task forces have said, in our work looking across the campus, we've identified a number of units that are doing similar work, and we think they should be talking to each other about whether there are opportunities for synergies, whether there are opportunities for better collaboration, to work more efficiently and effectively, perhaps to merge these units. And those are things that are going to take more than just a yes or a no. There's going to have to be analysis and deliberation and consultation across those units. So for significant actions, we're going to ask the action plans to contain a description of follow-up steps with a timeline, talk about the individuals who would be impacted by the change that's been recommended or the change that's being put forward in the action plan, an assessment of the resources that will be required or released by these actions over both the short term and the long term, and then anticipated outcomes. I've heard from a lot of people who are concerned about what's going to happen after Monday and how fast are things going to happen. And interestingly, I've really heard from people with apprehension across the spectrum. I've heard from people who think that things are going to happen really quickly and that decisions either have already been made in secret or they're going to be made without any thought or consultation. I've also heard from people who think that the report is going to come out and we're going to ruminate it about a lot, and then it's going to go on a shelf, and the task force work will have been in vain. And I can tell you that I don't think either of those are going to be the outcome. The President and Vice President Phillips and I, the Cabinet, the deans, we're committed to this process. But there are no snap decisions that have been made or that will be made, because feedback is not window dressing. Feedback, collaborative analysis, and discussion is important to inform recommendations and decisions, and we do that on this campus all the time. When we're picking deans, we have search committees that bring people with different perspectives together to try to help us pick the next academic leaders. When we consider individuals for promotion and tenure, we have thoughtful individuals come around the table with diverse perspectives. We did that with the task forces. It's the way we make important decisions on this campus, and it's the way we're going to make decisions about how we use the program prioritization recommendations and the subsequent feedback and the action plans to link our budget to our mission. And then the actions related to program prioritization recommendations, can't all be implemented immediately. They're going to have different timelines depending on the nature of the recommendation and the accepted action. We may be able to start doing some things in fiscal year 17, more in fiscal year 18, but this is a longer term process. Changes will be initiated over the course of probably 4 to 5 years. One thing that we think we'll be able to do that will be tangible in fiscal year 17 is to start to use the action plans and the program prioritization recommendations to inform hiring plans and hiring decisions. Because of the budget situation, we haven't been able to refill or fill a lot of vacant positions. In many places, we've chosen to refill positions with temporary help rather than permanent help. And we'd really like to be able to start to use the filling of those positions as a mechanism for strategic resource allocation, coherent with program prioritization. We're working on what that process will look like. There will be some type of hearing component, but we're a little bit in a tight place to tell you exactly what's going to look like right now because we don't know what our FY17 budget is going to look like. And so stay tuned on that one. We're hopeful, as Vice President Phillips has said, that we'll have an FY17 budget before June 1st. In addition to fears about what's going to be done and how fast or slow it's going to happen, I know people are concerned about how things are going to be done. And I want to say that we're going to be using established curricular and shared governance process. We're going to be respecting those processes as changes are implemented because that's an important thing for our campus. And it's also going to help us get to our overall goal of changing the way we think about mission and budget. If we want these to be connected and we want that to be the way that NIU does business, it will be helpful for us to use existing structures and committees to make those connections, those linkages, and those processes work better. And so I mentioned previously that the Executive Budget Committee that was charged by President Baker will be working with the faculty leads from the Resource Space and Budget Committee and the Academic Planning Council, because those are the two shared governance bodies that our Constitution and bylaws tell us exist to advise leadership on how resources are deployed to support NIU's mission. So that's one example of using an existing process. I think we all understand that our curricular process is going to be key in looking at either the addition or deletion of new academic programs, because that's what we do now when we add or delete academic programs. There's a lot that we don't know about next year's budget, never mind budgets 4 and 5 years out. But I think there are some things we know about the multi-year budget process that we're going to build and implement. And that is that we very much want to continue to use both quantitative and qualitative data to inform our decision making, that we want to continue to communicate to the campus about what's going on in a transparent fashion, and that we want processes to be rigorous and to have integrity. Before I turn the microphone back over to President Baker so he can offer us some final thoughts, I just want to say thank you one more time to all the people in the room who haven't been thanked, who may not have been on a task force, who may not have nominated somebody, who may not have been on a support committee, but who have given us their time, their patience, their ears to listen, to learn, to think about this process, and to be part of making NIU a better place. So thank you all, and President Baker, please.
Great. Thanks. And I want to thank Lisa for leading the whole process as well. She's taken on a huge administrative task with this, so thank you very much, Lisa. So we're about to move into the questions, and I just want to reiterate a few of the things about program prioritization that we've stated here. To reiterate, we want to align our resources with our mission. That's why we did this. And we needed a process, and I think this was a pretty good first try at a process. And we'll make changes as we see fit from the recommendations coming out from the task force and the committees, but I think it's been a great first one. We wanted it to be inclusive, comprehensive, data-driven, and transparent. It has been. And we really want to have these outcomes help drive our strategic planning and the implementation of our strategic plan throughout the institution. So to help us with that, one more time, feedback is important. So when this is posted, please do go in and look at it. And the people that have looked at it in the two task forces have looked at it from a university level. What's right for the university? How should we position this university going forward? And so please look at it with those kinds of eyes and think about how those recommendations fit in from the future of the university. So as we work to implement it, we need to think about the long term of the institution, how we're going to work more effectively together, how we align our budgets. And the recommendations that come out are going to be on a continuum of simple to complex, from ones we can do relatively quickly and make a lot of sense to more complicated and expensive ones that we have to work on over time. So you're going to see these implementations over a long period of time. Lisa even said even a number of years, and I think that's right, depending on how complex they are. So again, my thanks to everybody that's worked on this. It's been a big process. Let's open it up to questions now and see what we can answer. Who's first?
Hello, I was just wondering if you could explain a little bit, maybe I missed it, but how the recommendations from each of the two task forces are going to be integrated. Will that happen in terms of how is it determined whether a ranking from one task force is how it relates to the other task force?
So, they looked at different programs, right?
Correct.
So the academic programs on one side and the other. And so the implication might be there could be something on the administrative side that would affect an academic program, and how do you talk together across those?
Fair enough.
Is that, restate it if I screwed it up.
I think you're accurate, but I'm also looking for is it true to say that let's say a program that ranks in the middle of the field on the administrative side could outrank a program that is in the upper part of the field in the academic side? Or how do you reconcile those different rankings?
Okay. So I think I'll start and I'll hand it over to Lisa here in a second. Let's say you're in the academic side. I see Dean Chainbeckler here in the front row, and she's got a series of recommendations about her college and the programs that are in it. And there's going to be probably some ordering that she does, thinking about which are the most important, which one she wants to do in what order, right? And she's going to work on those, and she'll come back with recommendations on those. And depending on which category, I think your question might be if there's money to be allocated to one to invest in, how does that weigh in one versus the other? Was that kind of where you were headed? And so she would have to come back and make that case to the provost, and then the vice presidents would be looking at theirs, and at some point we'd have to have that balancing at the top in terms of budgeting and prioritizing. Another reason why I want that executive budget committee in place to look across the whole institution and do that kind of balancing. That'll take some judgment, and why we want to have all of your feedback along the way. Lisa, what do you want to add to that?
I think President Baker probably hit the high points. I want to remind everybody that what's coming out in the task force reports are categories, not rankings. So we'll be looking at programs that are in one of those 5 categories on either the administrative side or the academic side. And I think that when we look at how we do resource allocation, there'll be a number of factors that come into play the way there always are. First, there'll be what is the pool of available resources? And if a recommendation comes to continue a program with more resources or continue a program with the same resources, but it looks like in the narrative We can do something that is essential for life, health, and safety in one case, and then we would probably prioritize that. If we think that doing something with a small amount of money is going to generate more revenue that we can then reinvest in other university programs, that would weigh into an overall decision. If a program is identified as being able to do more with more resources, but those more resources require a new building, that probably would be something that would have to factor into that program rising above others. So I think what I'm trying to say is there are a lot of qualitative decisions that are going to have to be talked about. The way these things are generally talked about when you do budget allocation and ways and means hearing processes that rely on something other than the way we've always done it, which is everybody starts out with X, and the next year you get 10% less than X, and the year after that you get 20% less than X. This year we've gotten 60% less than X. But we haven't been allocating resources strategically across the university. Deans and department chairs have done a good job of doing that with the resources that they control in many cases, but it's something we haven't done at the university level. So as we start to do that at the university level, we're going to have the same types of conversations and analyses among the deans and across the cabinet and within the advisory group, and ask shared governance, are you happy with the way we're building this process, and are the decisions we're making consistent with what you expected to see reflect program prioritization? So there'll be a lot of back and forth and a lot of analysis and decision making the same way colleges do it and the same way departments or divisions do it.
Okay. Next.
Okay, so I have three questions. Probably fairly easy. To what extent, the feedback that you're seeking, to what extent, if any, can that be done anonymously? Regarding the program narratives, I was just curious, you're going to make them available to a wide chunk of the NIU community, but not the general public. I was just wondering what influenced that decision. And then thirdly, I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on the thought that went into the suggestion or recommendation that the categorization fall relatively equally into the 5 categories.
Good. Carolina, why don't you take on at least the first two?
Take the first two.
It will
Is it on? Yeah. So completely anonymously. There's a place on the website where you can put in your feedback, and if you choose to, you can identify yourself, but it will be recorded without any identification if that's what people want. That's the answer to the first question. The second question was the narratives. So people wrote the narratives with an understanding that they were being used internally, and we are trying to respect that with putting a login for that. And so basically, we want the whole campus community, the university community, to see those narratives, but we don't necessarily want to publish them for the whole world. So it's basically protection of the privacy of the individuals who wrote those narratives, and that was a decision there. But the task force reports, obviously, that's the product we've always known would be public.
And on the third, I'll start and ask Lisa to come up too if we need to. When we started this process, we wanted to see who'd done it around the country and what some of the best practices were. And we read the literature, and it looked like if you don't have some kind of categorization process like that, it's pretty easy to put everything in one bucket and not really get the differentiation you need to look at things objectively. And we brought in a consultant named Goldberg, and he came and talked to us about what some of the best practices are, helped train the task forces, and his strong recommendation was we did it that way. And so looking at the literature and looking at kind of the logic underneath that, we went ahead and went with those categories. Was there anything else you want to add to that, Lisa?
I'll just say that when you're doing peer review, like those of us who are in the sciences would do for a federal study section run by the National Science Foundation or the National Institution of Health, you're comparing excellent programs to at the bottom end very good programs. And so if you're not forced or required to spread them out over the available evaluation scale, they will all clump together. I think the task force members understood that this was a device to spread the programs across so that we could have a discussion that would be useful and that all of the time they spent would produce something that wasn't, all of our programs are great, we live in Lake Wobegon, let's move on. And so I think we're mimicking best practices that are used in peer review in a number of different contexts in asking the task forces to distribute the programs that way.
Yeah. Good. Is that okay? Good. All right, next. Oh, she faked us out. We should make.
Doug, we received a question online asking, over the last couple of years, the university has had a policy of leaving some jobs unfilled to save money. While that has extended the length of time that the university can keep its doors open, it has also left some areas below critical mass. Is there a plan in the short term based on program prioritization to allow accelerated hiring in departments or divisions that are deemed critical to NIU's success?
I'm going to turn to, you want to do it, Al or Lisa? Which, Al, you want to assume the mic?
Given our budget situation, we're still not in a position where we can open up hiring and go back to the way that it was. As we go forward with the program prioritization process, much like with financial resources, that will also inform our decisions about which are the critical positions to fill, and we will continue to go forward in a very deliberate way. In the short term, the fact that we have not been filling positions has certainly enabled us to, as I said earlier, not have layoffs and furloughs. And so the program prioritization process, much like influencing the budget process, will also influence the filling of these positions as we try to bring the budget in line and the human resources in line with what we learned from the program prioritization process.
I don't think I can add very much about the budget piece, but I guess what I will add is we're very appreciative of the extra work that people have taken on during this very hard time, and we also know that it's not sustainable. One of the things that I'm very inspired by is actually how many people have used the opportunity and have been inspired by the program narratives they wrote to think about different ways of doing things, to think about restructuring their units, so that I think in some cases when we get the task force recommendations returned to the unit, they're going to say, what you recommend is reasonable. In fact, so reasonable we've already done some of it because we figured that out on our own when we had to do our jobs with a lot less than we ever had before. I know that there's a lot of concern across the university, not only about positions that have gone unfilled, but positions that have been filled with temporary workers. On the faculty side, we've held off deliberately doing tenure line hires in a number of departments, looking at temporary instructional staff or visiting professors so that we would have the outcomes of program prioritization to inform our future hiring, and we want to move on with that as quickly as we can. I will also say that we still have more of our classes taught and more of our faculty in tenure line positions than most universities who have a mission like ours. So I'm proud that we've been able to maintain that even in these hard times.
I have probably more of a clarification request than
Sure.
A question. But for directors who needed to write these reports, if directors have any concerns about what category their program has been assigned, the appropriate place to put those concerns is during the feedback period.
Yeah.
And then if you could remind me after that feedback period where the next step comes.
Let me move that slide back. Carolyn, did you want to, or Lisa, either one? It's coming. There it is.
Feedback through the website is encouraged, as we've said repeatedly now, and so you'll do that before May 23rd. You can do that anonymously, or you can identify yourself. Secondly, you can also provide that feedback to the program approver. So a director would have had an approver, a vice president perhaps, who approved that program. So that'd be an important person to provide that feedback to as well. And then that feedback will be used in the development of the action plans that the ultimate program leaders, who are those approvers basically that have been working on this all along, will ultimately provide to the senior cabinet. Do you want to add?
Thanks.
I don't think any of the deans or vice presidents who have the ultimate responsibility for the action plan proposal could write those without extensive consultation with the directors who were the original program authors. I think that's expected and it's encouraged. I think in addition to responding to the recommendation as reasonable or unreasonable or the other categories that we saw, in some cases where units are advised that they might want to look at opportunities for working more closely together, you're going to have directors and vice presidents talking across divisional lines about how to most appropriately respond. And I think that that's a good thing. Even if the program prioritization task force recommendations are soundly rejected, we know that they'll be being rejected because people thought about things in a way they hadn't thought about them before because we've gone through this process.
Is that good? Okay.
So I guess another clarifying question first. The narratives are not being made public, just within the university, but the recommendations of the task force, those quintiles or thereabouts, will be made available to anyone accessing this website?
Correct.
All right, so if, based on the feedback, there is a possibility of some slight reshuffling of those quintiles, I'm just wondering about the impact. I mean, say a program comes out initially as a candidate for decreased funding. Wouldn't that affect recruitment for that program?
This is going to be, as Lisa said, a long process. And so I think we've got to take it in that long arc. It could potentially, but I think we need to look at it in the long arc and see if we actually want to do something or not. Right? These are recommendations. These aren't the final answers. These are recommendations that we all need to give feedback on and then make sense of it and then make decisions. So I would say hold off until we actually have the final decisions done. Well, they aren't open to potential students. They're just open to us here in the community. The reports are open, yeah. Do you guys want to say anything else?
But didn't you say the recommendations of the task force will be open on the
Yes.
website? So
Yes.
potential students will be looking at them?
Yeah, I think that
Potentially?
we're being transparent with the recommendations of the task force. The table with the categories is in the context of a larger report. Many of our accredited programs on campus already require that critical self-studies are posted. Our College of Law has to post a lot of data about its students, its bar passage rates, its placements. And so I think, and some of the accreditation reports that we're required to post have comments about resource allocation in them. So I think students looking at NIU who may be looking at a program and discouraged or concerned about what's there have an opportunity to ask at the program level. I think in some way too we have a balance that we're good stewards of public funds, and the parents who are writing the tuition checks will see that we're a university who's thinking extremely thoughtfully about where we invest our resources on our campus and how we try to be as effective and efficient as possible.
I guess I was wondering about the specific case where there might be an underlying misunderstanding, which was one of the examples you referred to.
So the action plans will also ultimately become available to the university community, perhaps some executive summary available to the public. We haven't talked about that in great detail. But when you look at other universities that have done this, their process is out there. And somebody's challenge to a recommendation is available. It's out there. The feedback from departments and centers and programs, because it's at the program level, those responses can be posted on your website. The Student Association probably will post the Student Association formal feedback on their website. Any academic program will have, an opportunity to do that if they want to. I understand your concern, but the alternative to it is being less than transparent, and I think that we've made the decision that we're going to err on the side of transparency.
Doug, we received a question online from someone wondering why the budget committee you described does not include a faculty or staff member.
Well, this is the executive team. Am I on? There we go. This is the executive team that's taking a broad university perspective from their positions, and it's an advisory group. And we have the Resource Space and Budget Committee that the faculty and staff have, which is also a large and inclusive group that gives us feedback as well. So we have that mechanism. So I think we've got good inclusion on both sides. Nothing else? Should we give you an hour back in your life? Let me reiterate just a couple things then if we're winding down. You probably heard too many times, we want your feedback. We want your feedback. So Monday at 3, don't crash the servers. Wait till 3:05 or 3:07 or whatever to log on and look. And take a deliberative look. And, or maybe you should wait until after 6 o'clock or something and have a cocktail while you're doing this, but if you take cocktails. I think I'm really proud of this university. Let's think about what we've been doing for a year and a half. We knew that we wanted to spend our money on the right stuff. And we knew we didn't have a great process in place to spend our money on the right stuff and figure out how to get it there. And I'm so proud of everybody that's worked on this for a year and a half now to develop the process, to develop the criteria, to collect the data, to do the narratives, to analyze the narratives. And now we're going to get a report to look at, finally an outcome of it that we can take and examine and study and think about the future of this institution. That's a big lift for us. That's a cultural transformation. That's being data informed and strategic. And that's what we want to do as a university. We want to make this place work as effectively as it can so your jobs are easy, so you can be successful, so we're serving our students and we're serving the state and beyond. And this is a mechanism to do that. Not a lot of universities, some have done it, not a lot have done it as well as we have up to this point, I don't think. So I just want to say how proud I am of all the people that have done it. Now we all need to do our part, give us the feedback, and we'll take the next steps in analyzing it as we go down the process and make decisions about where we're headed. And to make all this work really well, it'd be great to have a budget. So, and not just a 30% budget, but the full budget. So if you have not called or written your legislator or your governor, I would encourage you to do that. Again, use your home email or phone, but go ahead and do it. And if you've done it, do it again. And share with them what your thoughts are. This is incredibly important for the people of the state that higher education thrives. It is the future of our economy. It strengthens our social fabric. And with a harmed higher education, I'm concerned about this state. It's not the right thing to do. It's not right for economic or social justice issues. So let's do our part and let the legislators and the governor know what we need to make this state successful. And now, when that budget comes, we've got a game plan. We've got a process, and we're going to move the place forward. So thank you all very much for participating, and thanks for being here today.